Good morning on this March 21st, Sunday, post-service discussion. We had a little bit of a snafu that we had to adjust to. At the last minute, I ended up reading a 2017 2017 sermon from the Shoreline Unitarian Universalist Church. So it's interesting to think about a sermon that was given 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, and how it relates to what we're dealing with now. And JC, before we started recording, was actually making a very interesting point about COVID. So JC, if you don't mind,
Oh,
could you
okay.
pick back?
It's like, if you can think of our experience of COVID, not with the overwhelming deaths, but as what has become possible. It's been a year that we have figured out another way to live and to communicate, and in a way that makes more things possible than were possible before, because it's like it's empty out there. We don't have to go up on the mountaintop. We can actually put things in words and maybe find a way to act on them now. And I mean, one of the things we're thinking about in this household is we will not celebrate the 4th of July like we always have. There will always be what we celebrate and what others can't. And that makes me think, what does the 4th of July look like when the Blacks who were slaves are not able to be free the way I am in this country?
Interesting.
And so I don't have an answer yet, but that I know is what's on my mind for now until July.
Well, could we explore that a little bit? In what
Sure.
ways do you feel like Black people are not as free as you are?
Well, the easiest thing is
got a number of ways.
how I would be treated if I were stopped while driving my car. That would be a totally different thing if I were a Black woman. I would have to worry about not having my hands up. I could not just reach over and get what I need to show the officer. The way we understand they are not trusted, we would just be treated differently. And I understand that now. I've read Caste. I get it. I would not be shot if I walked away down the road. I would be apprehended, but I wouldn't be shot in the back. And they would know the moment they had taken 3 steps down the road, they would be shot in the back by a cop.
Okay.
Now, or anybody else that happened to be around with a gun who would feel they had the right, because they are not considered the same as people.
Okay.
By a lot of people whom I don't consider to be very humane. So we'll put it that way. So I guess I may have even gone overboard in seeing how differently they can expect to be treated. But I know I need to be very careful about, like last night, I even watched the movie, the TV thing, All Rise. And the judges there were being challenged by someone brought in to do that, challenged to recognize their unacknowledged biases when they looked at someone accused of a crime. It was an excellent show because the judges, who are used to being honest and aware of the law began to realize that they heard things differently coming from the mouth of, in this case, an Oriental person than trusting they would understand the mental concepts of it. So that's the thing.
Okay.
So
That
I haven't quite figured out how to do that. But I know I see it differently now. And the whole point in Caste that blew me away, of course, was when the Germans recognized that we had legalized the exclusion of the blacks
oh
in
yeah,
our
yeah.
written laws.
That
And they said, oh, that's how they did it. So then
yeah.
they did the same thing against the Jews.
Yeah, and Dinesh D'Souza, actually, if that's he did a lot of the legwork on the Southern Democratic Party and their influence on the Nazi Party in Germany. It's a very, very interesting history. Now, of course, Dinesh D'Souza, if you want to follow up on this, his thesis is that the Democratic Party never stopped being the party of slavery and racism. They just transformed how they the plantation is usually the way that it's discussed, is that instead of having a physical plantation, the Democratic Party then uses government money and government care to keep Black people poor.
Well, however the government did it and by whom, it was well done.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
And
don't think
effectively
anybody.
done.
Yeah,
And what is this person's first name?
Dinesh D'Souza.
Ganesh.
Yeah, he's a he served in the Reagan administration. He's been through a few scandals, but very, very sharp mind if you want to read well-constructed conservative arguments. Yeah. Connie,
Well,
I didn't.
I wish they would just say that those are ideas that have a value, as opposed to pretending they were Democrat Party ideas.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess if you're a Republican trying to argue for Republican government, there's an agenda there. Connie, did
Okay.
you?
I'm sure that it's part of.
Michael, I did.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks. We've been joined by Anne Claire. Welcome, Anne Claire.
Hey, Anne.
Yeah. Okay. So that was interesting. Does anybody want to respond or contribute or go a different direction? It's kind of free form today. Yeah, go for it, literally.
It's very interesting that our society has, in the last couple of years, to my awareness, has been pointing out the Black Lives Matter, et cetera, but then now we're had the killing of the Asian and such. I'm asking myself what's happening, because I honestly, deep down inside, if anybody is prejudiced, it's myself, but it's against the whites, because my whole life experiences from early childhood, I had nothing but positive memories of the Black people. I went to school in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and my very best friend was Black. But because my grandmother was so totally prejudiced, I was restricted from seeing her anymore. And there was a statement, and I don't know who made it at some point. They said if they were walking down the street and they saw 3 Black men coming towards her, that she would cross to the other side of the street. Well, I would lean towards going to the Black guys rather than crossing the street and running across some thug that's a white guy.
Well, I think the danger to women is men, you know.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, if you but also, you know, this is something that I've heard a lot of, like, you know, if you're on the street and, you know, and a black person versus a white person is walking towards you, do you cross the street? And that would inform what, you know, what levels of racism you have. And it's always interesting to me that the question is never asked, what are they wearing? You know, how are they carrying themselves? Is it obvious if they have a weapon? I lived in Phoenix where dudes walked around with revolvers to their, you know, strapped to their hips. You know, I mean, these are, you know, it's that I think when we're talking about our social cohesion, when we stick to race, it ends up being such a shallow
I agree.
way
Right.
of, I don't know. It's,
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
you know, and also, you know, when I was asked that question, my response is I wouldn't cross the street no matter who was walking towards me. You know, first off, I know how to fight, but that's not the important thing. The important thing is if you cross to the other side of the street, that signals that you are afraid, and that makes you an easy target.
Although I did hear in a discussion about in England about that women were saying, and a man said, if I were walking alone on a street behind a woman who was alone,
Mhm.
I would walk on the other side of the
Yeah,
street
yeah,
so that she would not feel endangered by
yeah,
me. And I thought that was cogent.
yeah.
Oh, okay. I
And
hadn't thought about that.
and most guys who have thought about this subject are of the same mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very gentleman thing to do.
Right. Well, we ought to try and raise gentlemen, you know.
I did.
Well, in one case you did.
Oh, shoot. After the discussion, Michael, I'd like to have a talk with you
Sure.
about your about
whatever. Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
So I will start calling on people. I still have the teacher gene.
Well, I think, Michael, at the top of the second page, she says, we came because we know that the Jews went to Florida because second only to silence, the greatest danger to man is loss of faith in man's capacity to act.
Absolutely.
And I think that is where I feel we are right now. And the thing is, with the Black Lives Matter, it's opened up. We can talk about it all now.
Mhm.
It's not a hidden thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's also why.
I agree. Yeah.
So that's why we don't need to go to the mountain.
Well, but isn't that a kind of mountain?
Oh, yeah.
You know?
But we can talk with
Yeah.
people. We can say, we can act. And it's no longer a thing.
Well, sir, you, JC, you and I could go back and forth on this for the entire hour. Connie, finally. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to add to that hopelessness, selfishness, because I think a lot of times people don't act because they don't want to put themselves out, you know, like, oh my God, that means I have to go stand on a corner and it's raining and my friends might see me, blah, blah, blah. So I think there's a lot of selfishness that keeps us from acting.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that it's not. There is a level of selfishness, but I think, is there a difference between selfishness and self-interest? Right? Because if I start advertising and standing up for what I believe to be right, man, cancel culture is real. you know?
Mhm.
And is the church going to get a slew of letters demanding that I be fired if I start to stand up for what I think is right, you know?
It will be from Unitarians, so what the hell difference does it make?
And Claire wanted to talk. So you're muted right now, Anne Claire.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I just had a thought about the idea of failure to act, when it's really easy to not act if I don't think there's a problem.
Yeah,
There's no problem. What are you getting all upset about? You know, why do I have to do anything? It doesn't affect me. So I think, you know, it's apathy. There's a lot of that. If it is not my deal, you know, gun rights are my deal, so I will storm the Capitol. But a free and fair education, equal education for all kids is not why that. I don't care about that, so don't expect me to say anything. So I think there's that too. And when it comes to, yeah, as long as I'm okay, along the lines of not in my backyard, but a little different is, as long as I'm okay, I don't have to look beyond my own backyard.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's okay
Yeah,
in my
mine.
neighborhood. We're okay over here, so y'all go take care of yourself. That's not my problem. You know what I mean? I think we've developed more of that mentality, unfortunately.
Is that human nature?
No, I think that's no, I think that comes with how we have grown so apart from neighbors. One of the things I wrote about in my thesis was how we've separated, like we don't go to the marketplace anymore. Now we stay at home and shop. But the women used to go to the river to do their laundry. Then they went to the laundromat or the laundry room to do their laundry. Then they talked over the fence as they had their clotheslines.
Yeah.
Now nobody talks to anybody
When
as
you
they're
wanna
doing their
talk,
laundry. And
you-
we've become so apart and isolated. I think it's as much that as anything.
I wholeheartedly agree, you know.
The community.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think,
there is what community?
yeah, and Claire and I are probably on very, very disparate sides of political discussion, but I think you are so correct in that, you know,
That
that
makes sense.
we don't have we don't have the sense of social cohesion that we ought to have in order to be a functioning society. Yeah, Kim had her hand up.
Can
And
I follow up just really
real quick.
really quickly?
Yeah.
That I think, because I think what you said was really important, that we may have disparate views on other things. I just had this discussion with a lifelong friend. Yeah, but you know what? Our values are the same.
Yeah.
And if we
I would hope
get
so.
off the discussion totally of the one and go deeper to where you get the values, that maybe we can restore some of this stuff, you know. That's all part of the problem. Anyway, go ahead, Kim.
No, that's a good point.
I don't think.
Go ahead, Kim.
I don't think that we listen to each other well enough. Even if we have different opinions, we need to be respectful to listen to each other and value each other's opinions and learn how to disagree with each other. Because I know I have a lot of different opinions than what you guys have, but I would never devalue your opinion and versus my opinion. I wouldn't sit here and say, oh, my opinion's the only one.
Well, that's like taking a religious stance.
Talk
You
if
know.
you agree with them. And I don't think that's right.
Right. Well, and I think you know, it's interesting that we're a church, you know, having a conversation, because no matter what your views are, the risk of dogmatism is very much a risk. We lost Paul, and Paul was next, and that makes me sad. Yeah.
Dear, I hope it's not the internet.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He'll get back.
Mhm.
He always seems to be able to scramble back.
Yes. Bob has joined us. Bob, you feel like throwing something in? You're muted right
He's
now.
muted.
Yeah. I had to mute you because you were talking while Anne Claire was talking. Yeah, you're still muted. I've asked you to unmute. There you
All
go.
right.
There you go.
I'm a late attender. I didn't catch the service this morning. I came in to see what was going on. I saw Anne Claire with her points, and I have nothing to add without some perspective. Thank you. Adios. I'll stay here.
Well, oh, and Paul is okay. Paul's back. So, what about you, Martha? What's on your mind?
Well, I agree with the lack of community. That's where I was headed. The issue of listening to each other and just being with each other over time and learning about each other, like the ladies or the men,
Mhm.
the men in the tavern, the ladies at the water. We don't have that central place where communities can go for this kind of discourse.
Mhm.
And the issue of listening to each other, I don't have anything original to say. I'm really agreeing with everything that's being brought up. We really need to be able to discuss our values without taking an extremist view that blowing our tops and getting our guns out or you know, it's some of the stuff that's happening today is scary, but it's almost cartoonish. It's to the point of it's like, I can't believe I'm seeing this happening.
It's like
And people are acting this way. I cannot, yeah. So
Yeah.
it's like they're in a movie. They're in a fantasy.
Mhm.
That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul's back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My electronic devices do their own thing.
Don't breathe on them.
You had something to say before you dropped out.
Oh, I did, but I would, as far as like living in a movie, it really does seem these days that what we're seeing roll out is like something you go and pay at a theater to see. I don't know, it's almost like the people and events we see are orchestrated. Like you can always predict a riot when something's going to happen. Or, someone will do something and something else will happen. So I tend to sometimes wonder if some of this is manufactured for our benefit or for society's benefit. Black Lives Matter, for example, doesn't seem to have much activity to do unless it's an election year. You don't hear about them on the off years, you know, and I would think that an organization that wants to get the message across would be working at it all the time, not just. Pardon?
I'm saying things, there's always things happening on equal rights. That's continually. That's a continuous thing. Maybe it doesn't make the big
Yeah.
headline.
If I may interject real quick, a lot of times when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, there's a disconnect. Are we talking about the concept or are we talking about the organization? Because those are two very, very different things. And it's kind of tragic that the organization, because it's so hard to discuss now, because if you don't agree with the organization, then it's like, does that mean you don't agree with the concept? And that but this isn't my Sunday, so if anybody wants to jump in. But Paul, you made an interesting statement about about the manufactured quality of the reality that we're living in. And that reminded me of a conversation that I was listening to on YouTube, where they were discussing having a conversation and then seeing ads on their phones for the things that they were talking about,
Right.
and how creepy that was, and how we live in this surveillance state.
Ah,
But there was a guest on that podcast who said, actually, it's creepier than that. The reason that happens is not necessarily because the phone is spying on you, but because the algorithm knows your habits so well that it can predict, what you will want and what you will need to talk about. So this idea that, like, we can envision the riot happening, as soon as something goes wrong. It might not be a nefarious, I mean, it might be, but it might not be a nefarious thing. It's just that we've gotten so sophisticated in our ability to predict behavior, that's why these things are happening. I don't know. You just reminded me of that conversation. It's interesting.
Thought control.
Well, maybe. Yeah.
and it is algorithms. It's AI.
Yeah. Glennis, sorry, Glennis, I totally stepped on your turn.
Not at all, not a problem. I'd like to go back to that question about what you would do if there were 3 Black men walking toward you and you're a woman or whatever.
Mhm.
And I would actually be assessing as to whether they're white or Black, as to whether these are people I want to, but the way to do that is to look in their faces and look in their eyes. How many times would you, instead of just passing, would you actually look at them? And most often I get a nod or a hi, or, or something like that, instead of just kind of, I don't see you, you don't see me sort of thing,
I agree.
And I think that would actually help the community aspect of what this discussion is going on. That we've been bemoaning the lack of a community. Well, we're so afraid to step out and see other people. It's like that song that we have, sing with me so I can know your mind. It's a matter of just
Come sing a song with
noticing.
me.
Song with
Yeah.
me.
Yes, that one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although, I think if we had like a 20-year-old female in here, every young woman knows you don't make eye contact, you don't smile, because that will be seen as an invitation.
Not
Right.
a smile, eye contact, because the eye contact is saying, I'm not worried about you. I'm just, hi,
Mhm.
Bye.
Fair enough. Yeah.
We don't have to worry about that today because we're all wearing masks. So
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Or
Well,
buried
and
in our phones,
yes.
Yes.
Can you think
That-
of any other way that a total, actually world, could have made a difference between your smile and your eyes matter? I
Yeah.
mean, watching a
Yes.
hospital show, when the doctor is telling the person they're going to have 3 weeks to live, masked,
Mhm.
that's a toughie. Because
Well,
you can't read anything more than just the eyes, and yet it's the voice coming through the mask.
I have a experience that at this point, it brings that up. Actually, I was in Weimar and masked, of course, because you have to be. And so was another woman who was kind of standing next to me, or we're kind of in the way, sort of. And I smiled at her, and she just kind of looked at me, and then I smiled at her with my eyes, and she lit up. So you can tell if you're aware of this, that how people are thinking and how people are feeling just by their eyes.
Yeah. Well, again, here is an area where women have an edge, right? There was a study done in England where all they did was they took photos of people's eyes, and they asked people what attitude, or what do you think this person is thinking, just based on their eyes. And obviously they had the participant who was photographed write down what they were thinking about. and the difference between the women's ability to, you know, discern and the men's ability to discern was like night and day. It wasn't even close.
Huh.
It's interesting.
Yeah. But again, you know, there's an evolutionary reason for that, right? There's, you know, why that would be the case.
Yeah.
And
But-
carry on.
Oh, well, because the ability to, when you are a physically weaker sex, right, the ability to discern intention is vital to your survival.
Okay, I see. Because I was going to say the man is really only interested in his own point of view.
That could
Usually.
be the case too. That's awesome. Oh, it's funny because it's true. All right.
Well, going back to her premise
Mhm.
that we need faith that human beings will act. We've been talking a lot of things that deny that faith here. We really think people will have a lot of reasons not to act. But I'm always shaken, I don't know, out of some higher place when I read the beginnings of Unitarianism.
Mhm.
They're legalistic arguments. And as she put it, a very small group of people who believe that the Bible did not state that Jesus was the Son of God,
Yep.
but a great example of an enlightened humanitarian. Unitarians say we should live like Jesus, not worship him. Now, that's my belief. And that's the belief I came to Unitarianism from an Episcopalianism, that the challenge is to live like Jesus, not to need to be saved by him,
Mhm.
but that I save myself by living like him as much as I can.
Yeah.
And then meaning deeds, not creeds,
Deeds,
meaning
not
that
creeds.
living your life in an ethical way is much more important than whatever religious creed you subscribe to.
Subscribe.
So, and that's it, folks. That's the whole deal. Then they got together around tables and devised 7 ways to know whether or not you're doing that. And we call them our principles. Well, there may be a new one.
Yep, soon to be.
Soon to be, and it may have to do with being able to relate to the human being no matter what their outside looks like.
Mhm.
Okay.
The difference.
To
Yep.
know there is a person in there that is like me.
Yeah.
And that'll be an interesting one to phrase, because it's Black Lives Matter isn't focused on the blacks anymore. It's
I see
everybody.
it, Kim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway,
In the discussion of like what would Jesus do, I would just like to remind everybody that one of those possibilities is making a whip and beating people with it while turning over tables.
All right.
what?
Oh, okay, that joke didn't land. All right, sorry. Crickets. When he threw the money changers out
Yes,
of the
he did.
temple.
That's right.
Yeah, but you're only 12.
Oh, no, he was
He was
in
older.
his 30s. Yeah. Kim, sorry, you had your hand up.
Well, when listening to this, I'm kind of confused on the Unitarian stuff, because I mean I'm not really a member of it. So I was wondering, do Unitarians believe in a God?
That's a
Yeah.
great question.
A supreme being
Yeah.
of some type.
They all have a concept of something being larger, whether it's, but it's undetermined, unwritten.
If does somebody want to tackle that? I can give it the. Yeah. Go ahead, Laura Lee.
Well, I understood, and I'm a relatively new member of the church, but I understood that the Unitarians accept people that believe God is on a throne with this golden scepter, as well as a spirit that moves among all of us.
Spirit of life.
That's good.
I tend to believe the latter, but I greatly respect people that believe God is above us and going to intervene in our lives, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't necessarily, I believe in the spirit, and I can't identify the spirit other than two people communicating without words, and being able to that spirit moves among all of us. Anyway, that's my belief.
Yeah, no, I'm seeing the head nod, so I think you're in good company. I would answer the question as the church itself, or the religion itself, doesn't take a position on the existence of God. That is up for the individual parishioner, you could say, to decide whether or not they believe in God and what kind of God they believe in.
You worded things so much better than I did.
No.
No, you did fine, Laurel. Really fine.
But yeah. So, I guess the shortest answer to your question is you'd have to ask the individual Unitarian.
Right.
But the difference, okay, go on.
Oh, no. Please go ahead, Martha.
Well, the difference is that we don't believe that Jesus was the divine Son of God. He was a physical being who was a wonderful prophet and teacher.
Yeah.
Who did wonderful things, and his life exemplified the kind of life that a lot of people would like to live to a point. The fact that we don't believe in the Trinity, that's where Unitarian comes from. Okay, we don't believe in the three of the Trinity. Okay, so we don't believe the divination and I can't say the word now, the powers of Jesus to be the Son of God. What's the word I'm looking for? Michael, come on, help me.
Oh,
no.
Telepathy.
Yeah, telepathy. Anyway, so there's a lot of power given to Jesus. The other thing that we don't believe in is we don't believe in original sin. We believe that we were born whole and good. And we don't have to work through our lives to save ourselves. We work through our lives to do good for others and to be a good person. But we don't have to worry that we are not doing good, that we don't have fear. We try fear versus love. So our lives are not run by the fear that if we don't do X, Y, and Z, we're not going to be saved. We don't have that undercurrent.
And that's the universalist part. The universalist comes from universal reconciliation, which was the idea that if Jesus died for the sins of humanity, then that price has been paid. So all of humanity is granted forgiveness, regardless of anything that they've done. And that's what the universalist part of Unitarian Universalist means. But Martha, I think it should be added that a person who believes in the Trinity, even though it's kind of funny, right? A person who believes in the Trinity and that Jesus was the correct Son of God would still be welcome in the faith.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was going to get there, but that my head didn't go there. But
the roots of the faith.
I was trying to go back to the roots of the faith.
Yeah, is what Martha was talking about.
Yeah. And then our principles reflect what we try to do. And everyone is welcome, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe. And we have all types of people in our congregations worldwide. All faiths are represented. They found that the rigidity of certain faiths are not for them.
Kim, did you want to respond to any of that?
No, I was just, I since I come in here, I didn't think you guys believed in a God. But then sometimes it comes up a lot and I'm like, well, do they believe in it or not?
Yeah,
well, our song Spirit of Life is basically our acknowledgement of life force is spirit. It could be God, it could be any,
Yeah. It you know, and it is it's confusing. I think it's confusing to people who have really studied the church. But I think there's a great deal of beauty in that confusion, because that confusion is reflective of the enormous complexity of these questions. And
if you just study our principles
well,
and see, yeah.
that's true. But yeah, Paul's been trying to get in. So
I just want to say that I really like Martha's interpretation.
mhm.
I agree. I think original sin is the original guilt trip that it's like the seed that grows into all these other ugly things that happen, that we're actually born with guilt from Adam and Eve's
Mhm.
horrible sin. So I don't believe in it. I do think that we're born whole and a reflection of God's wonderfulness.
I actually do believe in original sin, but not in the way that it's been proposed. I believe that by our physical nature, we carry a lot of desires and preclusions to things that are not healthy for us and that we have to overcome. But yet those appetites seem to be native to our human experience. So that's how I interpret the idea of original sin.
That's interesting. Like whipped cream vodka.
But I think also it's how you were sometimes when you were raised with very, very severe guilt trip. I mean, I had no concept of original sin in my upbringing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
It was not existent.
Yeah.
All I saw was God is love on the back of the church, period.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yeah.
And although we all were tempted to do sinful things,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that sinful things were not good for me as an individual.
Right.
I didn't go up here. I went in here. So, and I'm a modicum of purity and virtue, as you can tell. So
obviously. Glennis.
I haven't been limited. I guess the word is I have never been limited in my thoughts of what I could do because of guilt or whatever else. I just, okay.
No, those are great thoughts.
And some people are terribly handicapped by guilt.
Yes.
And
that's what guilt is
their
for.
adult. Well, that's my point.
Guilt is to make you handicapped.
I mean, I have a conscience. I know when I have hurt somebody. I know that I have done wrong, but I don't wake up and feel like I'm not worthy every morning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes absolute sense.
I just wake up and say, hey, it's a nice day. Let's get out and do something.
Glennis.
Well, I was just going to comment that if Kim were to ask 20 Unitarian Universalists about their concept of God and how they think of God or the divine or whatever, you'd get 20 different answers.
You get 21 answers.
Yeah.
Yes. And a cup of coffee to boot.
Yeah. So, and my idea of the divine is a little bit more nebulous, and it's difficult to explain for me. But it's like I don't have to know that it's there. I can feel it or whatever. I don't know how. But all I'm saying is that the thing that I've liked about this church, and ever since I started going to it, which was 4 years ago now, 3-4 years ago, I've lost count. Anyway, from the get-go, it was because they're not telling me what to believe. Right. And that's why I just kept coming back.
No dogma.
I was free to keep my own belief.
But at the same time, there's guidance, right? I think that's when Unitarian Universalism is at its best, is by saying, let's go this path with me for a little bit. You're free to walk a different path, but just try this out for a second. Kim, since you've been the subject, why don't you respond, and then JC had her hand up.
Go ahead. Kim.
Well, I just had a couple of comments on like the Zoom singing.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the song sounded fine. I like the song. That's not my complaint. My complaint is we're down to singing on Zoom, really.
Oh.
It just seems weird that we, you want to sing in a church or in a building, but it just, I just rolling my eyes because it was on Zoom, and I'm thinking, what are we've reduced ourselves to singing on Zoom. I just thought that was weird.
You should have seen last year's GA. There were lots of people on Zoom singing beautiful music.
And
it's the thing.
Speaking of that, I had a Zoom meeting Friday at my work. We have a staff meeting. We're all doing Zoom, and I'm thinking, where I'm sitting here, I can't hear the lady talking because of all this technology we have, and we can't have a decent speaker so I can hear. I just think I'm just so sick of it all. And I'm sitting in a room with everybody else because we can't go to a bigger room, and we all have masks on, and I'm just like, I gotta go outside so I can breathe. I'm just so sick of it all. The opening, you guys, she was saying something about for seeing a beautiful face. I'm thinking, no, we're not. No. We all have masks on.
I think your frustration is well understood.
So yeah,
yeah.
I get in the car. Actually, I get out of the store, but I get in the car and I do a flick with the mask. And then before I go to the next store, I have to go find it somewhere because I'm just so sick of it. I just fling it in the back and it goes flying.
JC, I think you probably had something to say about the Unitarian walking the path.
Oh, I guess I was going to say, even though a Unitarian hears somebody else describe how they stand with God or whatever, any Unitarian wants to say it in their own words. Mm-hmm. In other words, may exactly agree with you, Martha, but I wanted to say it my way. Right. So it does take a little tolerance there.
Yeah.
But the understanding that we're together, but we're not saying the same words, but we have the same meaning, the same expectation. And just like this minister who did this sermon today, as she said, I mean, I thought it was just really incredible about how he asked for help from what he knew was a massive Jewish group.
Yep.
And 17 people of them got up and walked out and came because they have faith that when somebody has a deep need, I'll go and be there before I even understand what the deep need is. And the witness to that is, you know very well, anytime a child has a dread disease and needs financial support to get it healed, when somebody, their whole family is wiped out and they're alone, people will be there, even if it's only with a casserole. But the point is, we respond to need. So therefore, you have to see what are the needs in the Black Lives Matter concept. What are the needs in when you don't have Black lives, but you say everyone's life needs you to know whether you've got, whether your mind is open to them, whether not your mind, whether your heart is open to them as a person. And that's what she's talking about, is having faith that human beings are making progress the way we see it, which is they're becoming better human beings. And I found it a very illuminating talk, but as I said in the very beginning, we may not have to go to the mountaintop. The whole thing is right here. In other words,
Right here. Yeah.
right here. We will never be what we used to be.
Oh, well, that's always true.
That,
You
see,
know.
but that I understand at 85. That's always been true. But that isn't what people say when they want it to be. We want it back the way it was. Sorry, folks.
Well,
Not going to be there.
but that's really the difference between liberalism and conservatism is
Yeah.
how
Oh.
do we view the past?
Oh.
Conservatives will often view the past as a noble time that we have to get back to, whereas liberals are like, we need to charge into the future because that's where our destiny lies. And if you don't have both, then the whole system unravels. Are there aspects of the past that were noble and good and we ought to return to? I think absolutely.
Sure.
You know.
Mhm.
Well, we
I
saw
think-
that as we watched our democracy be screwed with.
It's
I
being
think we
screwed
need
with
to
right
know
now.
about the past.
Well, wait,
Past-
wait, wait. Just to go in order, Lurley had her hand up, and
I'm
then
sorry.
yeah, no, that's fine. You're fine.
I just wanted to point out, number one, how much I appreciate this after sermon discussions that we have on Zoom. I remember back in the dark ages when we were all in the sanctuary. I don't know if we call it sanctuary or not.
Sure.
Yes.
And they'd be walking around with a microphone and taking comments from the congregation. It never went as deep as this Zoom meetings. And I don't know if it's because people are inherently bashful or shy, or they don't want to say anything negative. I don't know, but I do appreciate these Zoom discussions, and I thank you.
Yeah.
And I thank COVID for bringing that.
Oh, God.
That's the value of Zoom for sure.
Right. Well, I mean, of course, practically speaking, we have the hour now, whereas in after sermon discussion we would have like 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
but no, I think you are onto something, because when you're in the church building, you know, even for us Unitarians, there is like a real feeling of reverence, you know, that, you know, we don't want to rock the boat too much. I just a thought. Martha.
We were talking about the difference between conservatism and liberalism. I just wanted to just put I'm a great believer in history. And the fact that we have so many people that are not familiar with the slings and arrows of back history, that we're repeating, things are being repeated, the same arguments are being presented. That's where I have a problem with the past. If you don't know the past, you're doomed to repeat it. I'm talking about things that have hurt people, movements, things that have not been successful. So there's a big value of knowing about history.
Yeah.
And that's where I wanted to throw how important the past is. And I think that I do believe that conservatism has its place, and it's what we would call the compassionate conservatives. They have their place. It's what I'm just the people that don't want us to go forward because they're afraid of the other. They're afraid of making change. And sometimes change is painful.
Oh yeah.
But when you have people that don't have the same rights that you do, change needs to happen.
You see, and that's where I think there's a couple of us that would just disagree. I personally, I do not see the narrative of Black people being hunted by police officers. I don't believe, I think that has been blown way out of proportion by the media. I don't believe it. I have had a cop pull a gun on me, and I'm, you know, fairly pale. You know, so, you know, and again, it's a disagreement that we have, but we can talk
I'm
about it.
basically talking about trying to limit voting is where I'm going right
Again,
now.
I don't see that either personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why do we have voting on
Wait a minute.
Tuesdays when a lot of people work on Tuesdays? Many
That's-
countries have it on days where people like,
Well,
you
they,
know,
they have holidays. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's true. You're right.
yeah,
So
that
why-
would be one place to start.
But I don't want to go out of order. There was a queue, and I oh wait, maybe there wasn't. Okay, I'm sorry.
I think
Well, I was going to say what Martha just said with the concept of, now I can't even remember.
Oh,
But
and I threw you
what
off.
do
I'm
you
sorry.
mean what do you mean when you say you don't see the attempts to limit voting?
Yeah.
I
So
don't understand what
Mhm.
you mean by that.
yeah, so the idea that ID is required to vote, I don't believe that that's a racist plot to limit Black
Mm-mm.
people from voting. That's one
Okay,
I
example.
don't think,
But how,
Yeah.
are you aware of what is happening in state legislatures all through the South and well, wherever,
Mhm.
that are basically saying like, no mail-in, no this, no that? I mean,
Yeah.
are you truthfully, you
Truthfully.
don't see this happening?
So the question is, it's a complex question, right? The simple answer is that if there is a nefarious plot on the part of conservatives to limit voting, the nefarious plot is to limit liberals from voting, not necessarily Black people from voting, right? Now, you could say Black people tend to vote Democrat, but the idea that that is in and of itself a racist plot. Now, first and second, I don't actually believe that it's nefarious. I think that there are good reasons to examine who is voting. I'm trying to, I'm not going to find the words to say this as clearly as I want to, so I'm going to say it clumsily. I think there are good reasons to consider limitations on who is voting and has a say in society and democracy. And that's something that has to be fleshed out.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yep, go for it, Kim.
yeah, I think a lot of the voting's going on is voting fraud. In other words, people vote twice or three times, or dead people are voting, or a dog's voting. And I just want to know, do we have a fair voting vote? You know, is it being fair with voting? Because obviously a dog voting is not fair, or dead people voting is not fair, you know, and no one has tried. The only
Okay,
person
wait.
who's tried to challenge us.
I'm sorry, Kim. I'm sorry, Kim.
And nobody will.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I have to cut you off real quick. I had no idea. I was enjoying this conversation so much. I had no idea that we were at the hour. And so Glennis, I see you wanted to respond. This is a controversial issue. Let's see if we can do this very, very quickly. All right.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. I didn't realize it was the end either.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out that in 20 years of mail-in voting in Oregon, there has been very little, very, very little sign of any kind of fraud, and they've checked. That's all.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
They do check on the things that Kim
Yeah.
brought up here, like
Yeah.
dead people voting and things. I mean,
Right.
all over those things
Absolutely, they do.
automatically checked.
And again, you know, when we're talking about these things, it's like, does fraud exist? Of course, fraud exists. How much fraud exists? How much of it is mistakes? How much of it is, you know, and these are the kinds of discussions or the kinds of investigations, I guess we could say, that you know, would be fruitful for us to engage in more. But that won't happen today because we are we are finished. Boy, that was fun. That was really good, guys. I really enjoyed that.
Can I just comment? I was very, very appreciative of Glennis's readings. They were really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
I agree. Yeah, it's you know, we
I wondered what you were going to do with that.
It
Hey,
worked out just fine.
we recorded it, so yeah. Boy, well, thank you all, and I hope you have a great Sunday. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.